At some point or another, we've all played with toys. Action figures, dolls. Some of us still collect them. And for many of us growing up, cartoons often featured that one episode that dealt with a doll or a puppet that could move or talk. As much as we love dolls to play with and puppets to entertain us, we also seem to have an equally uncomfortable feeling of uncertainty around them. And this isn't a rare trait. Dolls and puppets are creepy. We see this idea perpetuate in many forms of media. Take Slappy the Dummy from Goosebumps, for example, or Annabelle from The Conjuring. Actually, it's a really prevalent idea in pop culture. We've seen lots of evil or creepy dolls and dummies in The Twilight Zone, The Simpsons, Puppet Master, Demonic Toys, Johnny Bravo, Small Soldiers, Child's Play, Teen Titans, Dolly Dearest, Magic, The Doll Master, Rugrats, Dead Silence, Darkwing Duck, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Doctor Who, Yu-Gi-Oh!, The Night Gallery, Coraline, and Ghost in the Shell. Just to name a few. The haunting work of Ito Junji even delves into this. But is their portrayal in pop culture the reason we fear these human-like inanimate objects? Or does it go much deeper than that? Indeed, why are dolls, puppets, and even mannequins creepy? To start off, let's organize our thoughts a bit. A villain like Chucky or the Commando Elite don't incite the same kind of fear that villains like Billy and Annabelle do. What's the difference? Well, for starters, Billy and Annabelle don't talk. In an interview for the film Annabelle, director James Wan pointed out the main difference between the idea of a killer doll and a psychological puppet. What makes ventriloquist puppets creepy and scary is not the fact that they chase you with knives in their hands. It's the fact that all they have to do is sit there in a chair and you walk by it at night to go get a drink and you think to yourself, did those eyes just follow me? It's the thought of something that shouldn't be moving, indeed moving while we're not looking. Villains like Chucky are already very animated, and we know what to expect when we watch a killer doll film like that. So it falls more in the category of killer doll slasher rather than creepy doll. Sure, it's scary, but it doesn't quite mess with your psyche the same way something that your brain thinks is moving might. Anthropomorphism and the Uncanny Valley are both subjects I briefly mentioned in previous episodes of Darkology. Anthropomorphism is our human tendency to give human-like characteristics to otherwise non-human entities. Oftentimes it's with inanimate objects, and many children's programs do this. Take shows like Pee-wee's Playhouse or Dora the Explorer, for example. As children, we often do this naturally, and the thought of our toys coming to life is a rather fun and welcoming idea. And typically, it's fine. The way they're portrayed in pop culture is often cute and non-threatening. But of course, as we grow older, the line between what is supposed to move and what is supposed to stay inanimate becomes very clear to us. And putting moving eyes on something doesn't always grant an inviting effect. Then there's the Uncanny Valley, a truly intriguing social phenomenon that haunts our subconscious thought when looking at something like a motionless mannequin or ventriloquist dummy. The Uncanny Valley is a hypothesis developed by Masahiro Mori, a robotics professor during the 70s. It's a theory surrounding the idea of inanimate humanoid objects like mannequins and robots seeming too lifelike, and at the same time, being so clearly not the real thing. The word uncanny means strange, mysterious, and rather unsettling. And Valley refers to the massive drop in our emotional response from one of a positive, empathetic level to one of extreme distaste once the appearance of something approaches a point where it seems too real, but isn't. A famous Austrian neurologist also touched upon this subject in 1919. Sigmund Freud, also known as the founder of psychoanalysis, theorized that the uncanny was that feeling you get when someone is both familiar and alien to you at the same time. For some reason, when faced with this uncertainty, we elicit a very powerful rejection response, a seemingly perpetual sensation of fight or flight. Something in our brain tells us that what we're looking at is wrong, and we don't like it. We see it often in CGI realistic actors, but the prime real-life perpetrators of this effect are humanoid inanimate objects like dolls, dummies, and mannequins. And there are names for our fears of these types of objects. Currently, our term for the fear of dolls is called pediophobia. Pedio coming from the word paidion, which in Greek means small child. It's described as an unwarranted, irrational, and persistent fear or worry of dolls. Then there's pupaphobia, pupa being the Latin word for doll, the irrational fear of puppets. But both of these are just specific phobias within the overriding category of yet another phobia. But more on that later. While we're on the subject, where does the extension phobia come from?
The word phobia itself is derived from the word phobos, which in Greek means fear or deep dread. It is based on the spawn of Aphrodite and Ares in Greek mythology, being the very personification of fear itself, rather than an actual character in the myths. But here's a fun fact. In the legends, Phobos had a twin brother, Deimos, which means terror. Daimia, however, it really just doesn't sound as good as phobia.
So back to where pediophobia and pupaphobia both fall into the same category. This next fear is known as automatonophobia, the fear of humanoid objects falsely representing sentient beings. Within the realm of automatonophobia, you might find the likes of mannequins, marionettes, ventriloquist dummies, wax figures, and animatronics. They resemble humans both too much and yet somehow not enough at the same time. We humans are very good at observing hundreds of different minute details in a face, and as realistic as some of these representations are becoming, we are still able to tell the difference between a real person's face and an animatronic or CGI rendered one. Okay, so we know on some level the sensation of dread from their uncanny realism has some scientific backing, but what else is there? In an interview with ABC, Becca Heisel, a porcelain doll maker from Texas who has been in the business for over 30 years, blamed Hollywood for the reputation of dolls as demonic figures, though even she admitted that porcelain dolls were eerily lifelike. She's quoted as saying, "They look real, people get spooked because they don't like the eyes, and they're too lifelike. The black eyes do look real." While scientists believe that a specific phobia can develop as both the result of genetic inheritance and environmental conditions, we still don't know just how much of an effect either plays in a phobia developing. What's theorized is that, as with many specific phobias, automatonophobia, and more specifically pediophobia and pupaphobia, develop in part due to a severely traumatic experience at a young age. If you look at how dolls are used in voodoo witchcraft, you might grow to believe dolls, in this case the personification of ill will, to be associated with evil, and by extension over time, believe that dolls themselves are evil. Perhaps you had an experience where an older sibling or a kid at school, or a certain YouTube channel, once told you a scary tale of a doll coming to life, and unconsciously carried that deep-seated suspicion into adulthood. Or perhaps, along with the rest of us, you were exposed to the concept of inanimate humanoid objects coming to life through what you saw on the television. At the end of the day, I do think it has a lot to do with that struggle of the uncanny in our psyche. If we were to see the doll moving and talking on its own, like with Chucky, yes, that would be horrifying, but at least then, our attention would be focused on grabbing the nearest protective object as our brains filled us with adrenaline. With silent and motionless lifelike dolls, it's the curious and chilling moment when you're staring at it dead on, it's not moving, and yet you can't shake the feeling that somewhere behind those glassy eyes, something's staring back at you, leaving you in a state of perpetual dread. Perhaps staring into those soulless dead eyes left an impact. Speaking of dead, I think that's another part of why we find these humanoid figures creepy. The ending to a certain episode of the cartoon Courage the Cowardly Dog featured a scene where most of the cast was turned into lifeless puppets, and in a macabre fashion that the show was known for, ended on that note. Courage was left with hollow shells resembling his family, but they were nothing more than lifeless husks. Perhaps we find dolls and dummies creepy because, in some twisted way, they remind us of corpses. But what about the moving toys and dolls in the Disney Pixar Toy Story series? They embody the example of what should qualify for pediophobia, and yet, they're not scary. Even the rotten neighbor Sid has toys that are rather scary looking, but end up being friendly, embodying the saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover." In the context of the story, we have the perspective of the toys and see things from their point of view, and we empathize with them. On top of that, none of them are really evil or sinister characters trying to murder the family. So, not all dolls are bad, right? In a museum in Key West, Florida, there lives a very old doll named Robert. Rumor has it that he is haunted by a mischievous spirit. Those who take his picture without permission are rumored to fall victim to a terrible stroke of bad luck, with frequent tragedies occurring. And many have written letters to the doll, asking for forgiveness and apology for taking his picture without permission whilst visiting. Not everyone seems to agree on the exact nature of Robert the doll. But what do you think? As with many specific phobias, the fear of dolls can be overcome through hypnosis and more practically, desensitization. Overexposure. So treat yourself and some loved ones to a horror movie about a creepy doll every once in a while. Take a second to appreciate the hard work and craftsmanship that goes into making a puppet. Question your fears and try to understand why you might find something scary. And as always, thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click here to check out the official Darkology playlist.